All right, folks, men, women, children, dogs, birds, feathers, sand, dust, blowing around in the wind. We welcome y'all back to another episode of hopefully your favorite entertainment, pop culture podcast there is on the planet of Earth. You know what I mean? We hope all's well. We're coming to you with a nice, cool episode today with a nice, great guest. The great Tom McLoughlin is up in here. Yep, Tommy McLoughlin is up in the building, and he's going to kill it. For anybody out there that might not know him from name, we got Friday the 13th, Part 6, quite possibly the best Friday the 13th movie ever made, outside of maybe the numero uno gives it the run for the money. But I think the fact that the first one is what sells it. Um, Part 6 is great for multiple reasons. Soundtrack is phenomenal. Brutal kills. You know, kids are kind of intertwined into this one a little bit, which makes it a little more creepier. You know, there's moments where you'll see Jason near the kids, and he doesn't kill any kids, but you get the vibe that it wouldn't be no thing. It wouldn't be no thing to kill a kid for him. You know what I mean? Which is problematic. Sometimes they come back. Stephen King vehicle, Good Times. I got that DVD made for TV, but still pretty epic. You know, this gentleman made movies that were very emotional, psychological, a lot of psychological, dark thriller, horror elements to it. You know what I mean? The Unsaid, big time films, and then Date with an Angel, which Alexander Hawk loves a lot, but I got bad feelings with it because it reminds me of the Date with an Angel that I had that worked on the film, Phoebe Cates, when we used to date, and then we had an issue, and Kevin Kline came into the picture and was just too much trouble. And long story short, when the smoke cleared, Phoebe Cates was no longer on my arm. Let's just say that. It was a very sad day. I don't want to
It
go.
was a sad day. I had to comfort him. It
Yeah.
was sad. It was many years of therapy,
Yeah,
many wet shoulders with him weeping into my arms.
yeah, I really don't want to talk about it. It's kind of a touchy situation. Uh, I'm gonna try and get through it, get into my peace zone, and figure it out. You know what I mean? And without any further ado, we'll kick it in with our guest because there's a lot to talk about. So, audience of the BoomBastiCAST, please do yourselves a favor, stand to your feet for just a few moments, and welcome the great Tommy McLoughlin to the BoomBastiCAST. How's it go? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm not, just as shaggy as always.
I love it.
Hiding from the pandemic.
Well, that's what it is. The pandemic and everybody shaggy.
Yeah.
Say, I have Alexander over here to my right. I don't know where he is on your screen.
Yeah. You're just below me, but still above me.
Hey, I like that. We got spiritual too.
So where are you guys? What part of the world?
We're Massachusetts. I'm more south and he's more north. But
Yeah, we got both sides of Massachusetts covered.
We got it covered, yeah.
Man, I was just there last weekend.
Yeah.
In Salem. Yeah.
You were there for the film festival thing?
No, I saw it, and boy,
Okay.
me and my girlfriend were so tempted to go in there, especially to go see the Spanish version of Dracula, which I never saw on a big screen.
Yeah.
But we had never been to Salem before, and I have this project that I want to do about the city and over the decades, but not exclusively about just witchcraft. About all the other things that I've have kind of learned that are going on, the political things about trying to get the witches out, trying to change the reputation as they have for years. And then, the real deal in there as well, that, kind of weaves through all the people running around in the little black hats like mouse ears at Disneyland, which I thought was very funny. It's gotten so commercialized.
Oh, for sure.
Amazing.
There's like urban legend around here that Salem isn't even really the town that it happened in. It just got like a bad rap. Like it was a town near them is where they hung all the burned all the witches and hung them up. because you feel that would bring some serious negative energy to whatever, wherever that happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I found out that was really fascinating is, you know, the place they say it all happened, Gallows Hill, and then they know where that is. Actually, and I think it was 2016, they found out it wasn't there. It actually is at this other location, and I'm blanking on the name of it at the moment. I'll think of it. But you know, they created like a park there, and the guy that was sort of doing the Salem, you know, ghost walk, vampire walk, whatever, you know, he was wonderfully dramatic, saying, whatever you do, I'm going to tell you the name of this, but whatever you do, go there during the day, don't go at night, you know. And of course, you know, I was like ready to get in the car then and go. But I couldn't find it. And then it was literally last Sunday, you know, that we finally figured out, you know, where it was, but then had to come back because I teach a film class, and, you know, unfortunately I can't be off chasing vampires and ghosts and not do what I'm getting paid to do.
Yeah, we got, if you're ever down in the Mass area again, let us know. We got a place called the Bridgewater Triangle, which is kind of like one of our big hotspots, and it's this big triangle that stretches multiple towns, and all bad news happens within type deal. It's fun.
Wow.
We're doing
all that stuff is so fascinating to me because, you know, the first time I sort of had that paranormal experience when I was 16 at my girlfriend's house, it's never stopped being an obsession, you know, of mine. I was supposed to do the prequel to The Exorcist, and I was on the, you know, the prep of that movie for 2 years at Warner Brothers. And one of the things I really wanted to do was to meet William Peter Blatty and talk about, you know, what we were going to do. And they said, you know, Blatty's not going to meet with you. I said, why? And he goes, because he hates the whole fact that anybody's doing any kind of prequel or you know, sequel. And he, you know, he doesn't want to hear about it. He'll take the money, but he'll not. And I finally convinced them to, you know, talk to him and let me go up to his house up in Mendocino. And the amazing thing is that, you know, when we were walking out of his house to go to lunch, he says, you know, come over here and look. And I said, what? And he said, do you notice my house? I said, yeah. He says, it's in the shape of a cross. You know, so from above, if you look down on his house, you see a perfect, you know, like Christian cross. And I said, what are you, you know, just protecting yourself? And he goes, yeah, you know, I don't want to hedge any bets, you know, who knows? But he was absolutely fascinating. And, you know, having grown up, you know, in and around the Catholic and the you know, Jesuit, you know, a lot of that stuff was very real to him. But the best prize is he gave me a cassette of an actual exorcism from Italy. Of course, you know, I don't know Italian, so I don't know what's being said, but every so often you hear that, you know, and he said, yeah, that was the sound that Billy used for the demon, you know, in the movie. And it was chilling, you know, it really was.
You know, they say that movie has a curse to it, and that would kind of make sense, stuff like that, you know what I mean, tied to it.
Yeah. Well, I have, you know, my walls lined with books about demonology and exorcisms and priesthood and Satanism and all this stuff. And I got to say that period was a very sort of dark psychological time for me. And when the script finally came in and I turned it down because I promised Friedkin, I said, you know, if I don't think this thing, I said, nothing's ever going to touch The Exorcist. And of course, the second one was horrible. But if I can't come even somewhat close to yours, you know, the third one, you know, based on your book, I'm going to turn it down. My hand to God, I will not do this. And he goes, okay, because if you do, and I don't like it, I'll go on every talk show. I'll trash it. I'll trash you. I said, don't worry. And of course, when the script came in, it was just way too talky. It wasn't at all what, you know, we had spoken about. So I walked away. John Frankenheimer came in, took over, was on it for a year, died. Then, and like, again, sort of mysterious, you know, he went into Cedars-Sinai for a check on something, and something messed up, and he had a heart attack in the operating room and passed on. And then Paul Schrader then, you know, took on the piece. He directed the script as written, the one I turned down, he turned in his director's cut, he was fired. It's like, this is no good. It's like, this was the script. No.
Yeah.
Then they hired Rennie Harlan. He came in, shot the whole movie all over again. So now they have, you know, 2 exorcists, and, you know, neither of them worked. So, you know, and I had to sign a gag order saying that, you know, I had nothing to do with any of it over the 2 years. And I was fine about that, because it just, you know, was not what it could have been.
Yeah.
You know, I saw it as obviously a possible career killer if I didn't do it right, but, you know, something that had that flavor of like The Godfather, because it was in the 40s and it was Father Merrin's first encounter, you know, with the demon that almost killed him. And we did casting. We found this brilliant little black boy that was, you know, going to be playing, you know, he was all twisted, and, you know, his body, you know, he came out deformed because he was born to the village whore. But then once the demon got into him, he just became like a perfect, you know, child, beautiful, and spoke like Hannibal Lecter, you know, in terms of how intelligent he was. And the writer just got very hung up on the intellectual between Merrin and, you know, the demon, and as opposed to allowing other things visually to happen. But, you know, it didn't want pea soup, didn't want any of the, you know, the stuff that had been made fun of for so many years. You know, you had to come do fresh territory, you know, with it, which they didn't end up doing.
I've always been curious of those films that get made and just disappear. Like you were talking about Paul's version, like it got finished and just got put on a shelf somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Really? That's
Well,
crazy.
I take that back. I think I remember hearing they ran it at a film festival someplace, and it actually got a good response, because it wasn't what they thought it was going to be based on, you know, the rumors about it, that it was, you know, very kind of tame and intellectual. So I don't know if they ever actually released that version or not, but I know it did get finished enough that they could play it somewhere, you know, come to think of it. But I've not seen either of them, you know, so I just heard and I thought I'm not going to go in there.
It's always crazy. Movies like that big can just kind of get tucked away. You know what I mean? Lost, if you will.
Yeah. Well, now Jason Blum is, you know, out there pounding his chest about, I'm going to make the scariest one yet. And we got Ellen Burstyn, and I don't know. Good luck, brother. I mean, you know, all of us who are big fans are certainly going to go in there very skeptical, but who knows what these guys come up with. I mean, I'll be happy if they do. I mean, I always want to see anything succeed, because it's so hard to make a movie, you know, and have it work.
Yeah. They're like boxers. They go to the podium, they speak their big game about how great it's going to be, and then they show up and give it what they can and just hope for the best. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know? So how did your love for cinema come about?
Very interesting. I inherited my father's dream. My dad was a magician and a fire eater, like in vaudeville. He went into the war, World War II. While he was over there, when the troops invaded or came in and took over France from the Germans, there was just shit all over the streets, you know, all the stuff that the Nazis had thrown out of windows and shit. And he saw reels of film, which fascinated him, 16 millimeter reels of film. So he's going down the street, winding all this stuff up. And there was actually an old German projector there. And the soldiers were allowed to take anything they wanted, just, you know, ship it back. And so he got all these like silent movies, basically, with German subtitles. And the bulk of them were Charlie Chaplin films. So I grew up on Sunday nights with the sheet on the wall and him showing these Chaplin movies. He also, after the war, on a GI grant, came to LA to go to USC Film School, because he, it wasn't going to cost anything, and he was fascinated with film. So he graduated in 1949. Well, nobody wanted to hire some guy out of film school in the 40s. It was like absurd. You know, you got in because you knew somebody, or it was your uncle or whatever. So he he took a part-time job, which became a permanent job at a paint store, met my mother, she got pregnant with me. He bought a little house in Culver City, right next to the MGM studios. So I grew up with his film equipment and his, love of movies. And I had the good fortune that the old backlots of MGM were right there, pretty much in my backyard. So on the weekends, me and my friends would go under the fence with the cameras and shoot on these incredible sets. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. The movies were terrible and stupid, but they were all like horror, or I think, at one point I did a kind of a James Bond movie and things, but it was just this excitement, to make something like that. So, I'd show him the films and he would like give me notes. So it really was like, something that was so much a part of my desire as a child to do something like Dad wanted to do. Of course, then the Beatles hit, everything changed. I went into rock and roll. He didn't want to talk to me. I got kicked out of 7 high schools in Los Angeles because my hair just touched my ears. This is all it took, and it was like, no, fuck it, rock and roll, man. This is what we're doing. And, we opened for the Doors and Iron Butterfly and Pink Floyd, all these groups, and we were 15, 16-year-old kids. And the movie thing just sort of disappeared. And then to be a more unique lead singer, I went to Paris at 19 to study with Marcel Marceau to be more physical. That led me back in the movies because I was living right across the street from a Cinematheque that changed movies 3 times a day. So if I wasn't in learning how to pantomime and do acrobatics and all that shit, I was in watching movies. So the two things kind of merged. I wanted to make visual cinema like I saw as a kid as Charlie Chaplin, and at the same time try to see if I could do like somehow features that somehow it was it really revolved around music and visual. And that kind of was what I pursued for years, until finally I obviously got a break with One Dark Night, which is very, very, very visual. And in fact, so much so that when we finished the movie, it had to show in the Bahamas 3 days later to qualify for these guys' tax shelter. That was the only way we could make it for $800,000. And it's like there was so little sound in it because so many of the sequences with going down through the mausoleum and stuff, were all silent. So it made me realize, boy, I really did go in here with very little dialogue and a lot of action. So, and of course that led to Friday the 13th, like 4 years later. But yeah, that kind of was the path from dad to screen.
There's a lot of comparisons, I feel, between being a magician and being a filmmaker. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
A lot of like behind the curtain, faking it. You know what I mean? Like I said, we do film, and I tell you, as like a director, when you can really fake something, and make an audience really believe that it's not, it's quite a feel. You know what I mean? Even the simple things, like we did it with the last short we did. Just the old simple car tricks of like doing a car driving, but just like, setting up the shot and then moving the car and having a light that goes over it, like, and really faking it. I always think that's the most fun stuff to actually shoot. You know what I mean?
You're absolutely right, Matthew, because, and now that I'm teaching film, which I didn't want to do, I never saw myself as any sort of teaching professor. As far as that goes, I mean, I didn't even make it through fucking high school. And then they're sitting there going, Professor McLoughlin. It's like, me? Oh, but all of us that are there, John Badham and all these, incredible sound and editors and stuff that, are hired at Chapman University, we're all people that did it or are still doing it. I'm still pursuing my career in both in rock and roll and in film. But I found that, you're talking to these kids right out of high school into college. A lot of them don't really know what they want to do, but they really love movies. And it's really teaching them. And I use that exact term, I say, we're illusionists. What you do in magic is that you misdirect the eye and you put the movie together in the audience's head. You cut to this, you cut to that, and suddenly they create a reality that's not really there. It's totally a magic trick. And, you have to kind of think it that way. So don't get all hung up on, oh shit, I want to do this thing and it's supposed to take place in this, palace or whatever. I mean, of course, now you have green screen and other things, but, you go online, you get an establishment shot of a fucking, palace, you you come in closer on it, and then you find someplace somewhere, I don't care if it's a Holiday Inn that has brick or something on the walls, and you create that, and people will go, oh, wow, they're not going to think about how you did it. They're just going to accept that for what it is. It's tricks, and you realize that, after 42 feature films, I've done a lot of magic tricks trying to convince people that we're in different parts of the world, or that this person is this way or that way. And of course, for actors, it really is about creating something that is not them, something that's believable to an audience and that they've really committed to as a character.
Yeah, Alex is an actor over here.
Yeah.
Great.
I gotta say, one of the things I love about acting, I've done everything behind the camera and also in front, and I think the main thing for me is the idea of storytelling. I love stories. I love trying to create a person and a character that, no matter how, I guess I've done like over the top comedies, and I've done, drama, I've done horror, but the only thing I really try to do with every character is make the character feel real enough that you can think, oh, I can walk down the street, and no matter how funny or crazy he seems to be, that you feel like you could actually, meet him and shake his hand. That's what I always try to do as an actor, to try to give, no matter how crazy the character is, a sense of realism that you can be like, that's like the guy that, I pump gas for on the weekends or something. It's like, just trying to bring in the realism, because no matter how outlandish or crazy the story is, whether it's, fantasy, sci-fi, if you can make them believe in the character, you're already halfway there.
Yeah. And there's the other thing too, Alex, is which I always share with these, both film students and of course, when I'm working with actors, is that there's got to be some element that you kind of love this character for all its faults. And maybe there's some secrets that they have that it's not in the script or anything else. It's just stuff that they have that makes them different from themselves, but you as an actor understand kind of what that would be like if you did have that. I mean, if you killed somebody, if you were cheating on your wife, if whatever, there's that side that you're not perfect, but it's not just about the words on the page. There's an inner life there. And it's hard for a lot of these kids because they're writing it. I mean, I've got literally a stack of 40 scripts over there. I'm overseeing 40 student films that started, a month ago and have to be finished by the top of December. And that's from concept to finished product, that can be screened. And to try to, spin 40 plates with these guys and try to get them to focus on what's important and the casting, all that stuff. I mean, it's maddening. And meanwhile, I'm going out of town. I go to Salem this past weekend. Thursday, I go to Manchester, England for the love of horror. I come back, then I'm going to Chiller in New Jersey. Then I'm going to Germany the next weekend, for these things. So it's like, I don't have the weekends to think about it. I just get back, have to take on all this stuff and try to do with phone calls and things, get them on board, because it is overwhelming when you really think about how many things it takes to go into, making a movie, and how many people, you need to recruit.
Yeah, well, for sure. It
Yeah.
was, recruiting people is a tough time, especially nowadays with the COVID pandemic.
Yeah. We got to adhere to all those rules too. And that's really difficult, because some people are scared shitless. Other people, it's like, like with me, I had it, I went through it. Hey, ain't that bad. Got the shots, wear the mask, be as careful as I can. But there's other folks that are just so terrified. They're still living in their houses, not wanting to go out, having food brought in. It's, like my band, because we're all the same age. I still am fucking 18 in my head.
Yeah.
They are in their 70s, and, so I don't want to die. And I go, hey, you ain't got no control over it anyway. And
Right.
I had it and I was far from death, so it's up to you guys. But it frustrates me because we haven't played in like a year and a half.
Yeah, but
What's
it
the
start,
shove?
there's a point when it starts to become like an excuse more than an actual inconvenience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
Sure.
people get, not all people, but they get very, very comfortable in not having to do anything,
Yeah.
and it's like an addiction,
Oh, for sure. I mean, time off is definitely addiction. It feels good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Make everybody take a break for 2 years, and
yeah,
Personally, I'm waiting for the time for I can actually have time off. I mean, I've been working all through this. Um, I, I was one of those deemed the essential employees, so there was there was no time
wow,
off for me. I'm
yeah,
still going, burning the candle at both ends. So
the show had to go on, Hawk, man. We got
uh,
to bring our show to people.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do, Alex?
I work at pharmacy back
Uh-huh.
home. Yeah. I mean, right now I'm looking to like change. I mean, it's new policies that corporate is pushing through, and we have a new boss that is making it less about the customer service and more about just the profit margin. I mean, the profit margin's always been there, but it's now gotten to a point where it really starts to affect the store and the employees even more.
The morale,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
so I mean, morale's right now in the toilet. So I mean, I'm looking to try to find something else, anything else at this point. But
Where's your passion? Is
well, my,
acting? Is it?
yeah, my passion is filmmaking, is acting.
Yeah,
But I mean, at this point, it's more money going out than coming in. So
yeah,
I mean, the only reason I because the job I have now I had when I was 16. So I've held the same job mainly to just make enough money to just throw into my passion.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, right now I'm looking for something that hopefully will pay more, and at least I mean I have no problem with hard work. I have a problem when
Sure, you
you
know.
when you put in the work, and and you just don't get any kind of incentive to do the work.
yeah.
And it's yeah,
I
it's
hear you. Yeah.
You
so
got it.
I
Well,
mean,
the only advice I can give you from, an old timer who's an artist and a dreamer is don't give up your dream, whatever you do. And I preach this when I'm on stage with the band and I hold up our vinyl album and I go, guys, we wanted to do this 50 fucking years ago. We wanted to have a vinyl album, and now we're like in our 60s and we finally are doing the dream.
Yeah.
Don't give up your dream. It might not be in your timeline the way you want to do it. God's a humorist. He'll watch you keep zigzagging down the road, but eventually you'll get there if you don't give it up. And I said, it's hard. A lot of you got to, you got to get regular jobs. You have a family, you got to raise kids. But I've seen so many people end up finally doing what they want. And even actors, I've worked with a lot of older actors that didn't really get going until they were in their late 50s, some of them, and grandparents, and they got back into it. And suddenly, they're in Jim Carrey movies and they're, got this incredible career. And we all say the same thing. It's maybe even sweeter that you've paid so many debts to get there than it would have been had it happened when you were a teenager. But, I see people too come into this town, LA, all ready to make it. And they get a job and it's like, see, I knew it was easy. And then the next one doesn't come, and then it's like, what the fuck? What did I do? You didn't do anything. Right place, right time. It happened, but you've got to just, kind of keep steady on it. Do whatever other job you got to do to pay the bills and, eat, but just keep finding some way to keep hooking up with people. Then all it takes is one of those guys to make it. And it's like, yeah, you want to come with me? Yeah, come on, because it's a collaborative art form. And one way or the other, either you're doing theater as an actor or you're doing, hopefully decent student films that go into festivals and shit. And then you got something for your reel. I mean, there's so many avenues that you can, kind of do as you're, waiting to get, quote, discovered, to do like mainstream stuff. But any place where the industry starts to pick up, that's not in Hollywood, good place to go, because they're going to be looking for actors, going to be looking for filmmakers, they're going to be looking for material, you know, because it's like, gee, we got all these people that want to do it. And, you know, we're our own little camp here. Like, you know, George Romero was, you know, doing in Philadelphia. I mean, and Robert Rodriguez in Texas. And, you know, you kind of create your own business where you are or where you go to.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Matt and I are constantly working on. I mean, we got the podcast now. We still doing films, doing shorts. And it's, I mean, the thing is, and probably the best thing so far in my life was meeting up with him. So keep we keep ourselves going at this point.
That's great. Yeah.
So when I get depressed, I call him up and he tells me keep going.
Keep going, keep fighting.
I keep on trying, man, but it's sometimes it's hard, man.
Yeah. The timeline thing's a new thing I've had to come to grips with, I think, and it's like, you know, as you're doing things, if you come into a snag that you get caught up on, you're like so in the moment that you're in the now that you go, oh, this is fucking the end of everything. This is so crucial, but like you really got to look at the big picture, a lifetime, a body of work. You know, if something ain't working for you this year, maybe it's the wrong time, and maybe in 2 years later it could be the biggest thing in the world. So you can't let it drag you down. You just gotta kind of roll with the punches. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, we all are insecure. There isn't a morning I don't wake up going, all right, what's going to go down today? I don't know. You know, and I start thinking about all the things I didn't get done yesterday, or what script I still haven't gotten back to, you know, 6 months later or whatever, you know. And I had a huge come down over the summer where I had written essentially a 30-minute short piece about racism that was a horror-based thing that Dan Merrick, who created Blair Witch, he had created this new series called The Black Veil, and it was all Southern Gothic, you know, stories. So he's been hiring, you know, different writer-directors to make these things. The budgets are like next to nothing, but certainly better than if you were doing like fan-funded films. You know, they actually have investors. So, you know, my thing becomes a go. I go down to Tampa, Florida. I cast, I've got my cast, I've got a crew. We're 48 hours from shooting. I've gone with the DP who's, you know, the age of my son, you know, who was DPing it, but smart, wonderful guy, creative. And suddenly, you know, of course, we're dealing with all the COVID shit, and because the producer didn't want to spend the $6,000 to get everybody properly COVID tested. But we got kind of through all that. And then the plantation that we were shooting at found out that I had an anti-racist theme in there, that what we were doing, although it was called the hanging tree, it wasn't the way they were thinking of the hanging tree. This was like, no, you know, we're putting a white racist chick from New York on that tree at the end of the thing, you know, over the situation of her just not changing her heart or her mind. And it was sort of like what she grew up with, you know, father, grandfather, who were totally about, no, we don't hire those people, you know. And so it really was like a morality fable kind of thing. But this guy shut us down. I mean, we couldn't, despite having a contract and all the rest of that, sue me. So, you know, I was on a plane, you know, that following Monday going, you know, I can't believe I'm going home with no film. And I was so stoked to do this because it'd been a while since I wrote and directed something. And the very theme of what I was doing, which, you know, was meaningful, was the reason that these folks said no. So, you know, it just, so it's strange, but haven't given up. You know, we're trying to find another plantation or a manor house in Georgia or Mississippi or whatever. And I just hope the money doesn't suddenly move on to, no, we're going to, you know, open up an olive garden and, you know, that's where everybody's going. So, I mean, it always, things like this happen, and it's like, okay, that one didn't quite work, you know, keep working on other things. Reputation is only as good as like the movie you made that's hot right now, and then it's like, what else you got? Everything else, it's like, you know, they're looking for you guys. I mean, they're looking for somebody that's fresh and new, has made no real mistakes. You know, you can look at my body and work and go, well, that worked and that worked, but what about that one? You know, that didn't really go. And So, that's the other thing you run up against, the luck. They want to believe that, this person's lucky, they're magic. They come on my show, it'll be great. I got the caterer that did the Titanic, and that was a big movie. Yeah. Well, you find out the guy was fired after 2 days, but it doesn't matter. It's on his resume, caterer of the Titanic. He git's the job, I mean, it's that maddening, how people get on things.
Yeah, the politics are nuts and crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I
So
mean?
you just have to keep being creative, keep putting it out there, put it on YouTube, put it on, obviously, any way that any social media thing, you can get it to somebody. And so hopefully somebody sees it and goes, hey, I'm doing something, would you like to, jump aboard? There's not a lot of money, but there's some, and you go for it. Hope it succeeds on some level.
Yeah, I mean, that's how our community was run over in Massachusetts for a long time, where it was just like you worked for credits in the hopes that the film you were working on was going to get somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
I had a question about Vandyken Company.
Sure.
How did you get involved with that? It's comedic, variety show type deal.
Yeah, well, that's really what I was going towards when I said I went to Paris and I started studying mime for the intention of, being able to do these things on stage that Mick Jagger didn't do.
Yeah.
And I was sort of pre-Alice Cooper in a lot of ways in terms of like visuals I wanted to do and stuff. And the irony of that is that, when I had my band in the mid 60s, there was a group that we used to play with called the Naz. And, the lead singer was a guy named Vincent from Texas. And I'd see him backstage, I'd see him at Frank Zappa's house, we'd talk and stuff. Vincent became Alice Cooper. That was the last time I saw him, was like 1966, despite that he's like, the song of Jason Lives. Yeah. And that, yes, I put some of his songs in the movie and stuff. We have still not hooked up in 35 years. But the irony is that, that was exactly the kind of way I was thinking as a rock and roller, to go with that whole kind of gothic horror thing. But when I got back and started to perform, I realized, I can do comedy. And I guess that was from the Chaplin influences that I saw as a kid. So I started performing, in theaters, on street corners. Whatever I made in the hat is how I ate that night. So I was either going to be McDonald's or Sizzler, depending on the money. And, a shitty apartment, no car. And I didn't have a car till I guess I was 23 or 24. So it was really that kind of vagabond artist life. But eventually I formed a comedy group called the LA Mime Company. We were performing at a theater. Dick Van Dyke, who loves physical comedy, just happened to come and see us. He loved us. He said, I've got a new variety show, would love to have you guys on, and I'll be like the 6th member of the LA Mime Company. We thought, oh, that's really funny. Yeah, it's great. And he meant it, and so he said, who writes and directs your material? And I said, I do. And he goes, great. Can you write something for me and Lucille Ball or Freddie Prinze or Tommy Smothers or whatever? So now, I guess what I was like 26, I'm directing these legends, Carol Burnett, in comedy, and Dick, and I got an Emmy nomination, from that. And that made me go, well, maybe I don't want to just perform. Maybe I want to write and direct, but I love horror. So I kind of shifted away from the comedy to do horror. But as you know, with Jason Lives, awful lot of comedy in there because I couldn't completely let it go,
Yeah.
So yeah, and Dick was and still is at 85 fucking amazing. I saw him a couple of years ago at the Magic Castle, and he is like the most positive, he's just one of those people that you go, thank God he walked the planet, because he's had such a good influence on making people smile.
Yeah, true legend, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I know
really
Andy Kaufman was also a part of that show. Any story,
yes.
I mean, any stories about Andy Kaufman? I mean, it don't get no better than Andy Kaufman, man.
I know, and we would all hang out together, like in the parking lot after the day, and there was one point where he goes, I have this idea of like creating this like lounge singer, and I'm going to call him Tony Clifton, but nobody's going to know it's me, and he's going to be like the rudest. In fact, he's going to be so hated, he's going to have to perform in a glass cage. So that people are like trying to shoot him and stuff, and we're going, okay, Andy. Yeah. Well, of course, he didn't do the glass cage, but he, created that persona in such a way that, he had his own social security card that said Tony Clifton. And when he died, none of us believed it. We thought this is another one of his wrestling, becoming Christian, all those things that he would do to say, how he had changed. And he dated one of the girls in my comedy group. And she said every time he showed up to pick her up, he was a completely different character. And he stayed that way all night, didn't break. So yeah, he was one in a million. That's for sure.
He's like, I guess you could equate him to maybe Peter Sellers, maybe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah,
Peter Sellers would only do it for the movies. See, Andy loved to fuck with people in life. That was his...
That's cool that you got to meet almost like the real Andy, if there was a real Andy. You know what I mean? Like the behind the scenes Andy. Yeah,
he was very driven, very sweet, very insecure. And somehow he could channel this, fearless attitude about no matter what, he wasn't going to break character, and he didn't care if it really pissed off people. Still don't know about the whole, Freddie Blassie thing and the guy that, actually, did the pile driver on him. If that was real or not. Yeah.
I think that was a work too. I think I've heard him talk about that later, but he was, because he was we just lost Norm MacDonald recently, rest in peace. And Norm Mac's kind of one of those weird, like those characters. He was very Kaufman-esque, you know what I mean?
He was.
You don't really know where the character stops and the real person ends type deal.
Yeah. My daughter's doing a show now with Nathan, Nathan For You. Have you seen that on Comedy Central?
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. He goes out there and completely cons normal people into what he's going to do for their business. It's pretty damn funny. Very, very interested. They're keeping it all very hush hush, where they are, what they're doing, to make sure it doesn't get blown. But I guess he got quite a bit of notoriety from Comedy Central.
Yeah, it's like the new age physical comedy is that kind of messing with people type deal.
Yeah.
So, I always like to hear about like the coming into big things. And with Friday the 13th Part 6, arguably the best film in the franchise, you know what I mean? People will say, like, a big fan. And, it was already an established franchise. And how'd you come into directing that and writing directing?
Well, the 70s, guys, was just, once Halloween took off and everybody realized, oh shit, we can make, a horror movie for no money, kill some girls, put a mask on somebody, whether it's a bag or a welder's mask, it didn't matter what it was. They could get a deal and they could raise money in Europe and release it over there, and they could clean up for well under $1 million. So wherever I went with my, like my One Dark Night idea, the door would close and say, look, if you could get some blood in it, at least, or you can, kill, with somebody that, we see through the movie, because I didn't show you the villain till the very end of the piece, and all the rest of it was kind of psychological horror and paranormal horror. I couldn't get that thing, off the ground, but if I wanted to do one of those, I could. Finally, I got One Dark Night made, and that was the thing that went to Paramount as an example of, my directing. And Frank Mancuso, they were like going crazy because they had put out, obviously, the final chapter with, all expectations that this was going to be it. But it made so much fucking money. Somebody said, you got to bring them back somehow. Yeah. So Part 5, as you know, wasn't Jason. And the movie ended with Tommy Jarvis with the mask. And the audience, the fans, were like, boo, no. so, you know, it was such a bad reaction that instead of waiting 2 years like they normally would to release these things, they said, we got to get the next one out like right away. So they started looking, you know, for directors. I really had no interest in doing a slasher type movie. It wasn't kind of where my mind was at. I didn't think that was right in terms of just enjoying watching women getting cut up. I'd go and see these things, you know, on horror movies and things in downtown LA, and the crowd would be just, yeah, get that bitch. Yeah, yeah, cut off her titties. Yeah, you know, and I'm going, you know, this is just too much. I'm sorry. I don't want to be part of that. I want to scare people, but not enjoy like the torture porn kinds of stuff. But he, you know, he met with me. He said, you know, you've got a really interesting style with, you know, you think you could put that into like a Jason movie? And I go, well, what do you want exactly? And he goes, we need to bring him back from the dead. I don't care how you do it. You could do anything else you want. I mean, within means, because, you know, you're going to have a whole lot of trouble with the motion picture rating board if you get too, you know, over the top with the gore. We've just gone through that with the last director. And of course, all the pornography, you know, because Danny Steinman came out of porno. He said, you know, all that stuff, just, you know, you're going to have to go in there and, you know, understand you're going to be running up against that. I just said, can I put comedy in it? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, I want the kids to have a sense of humor about the whole kind of that world a bit. Even the audience, I kind of want to have a little fun with, because this is the sixth one, you know, and there has been no other long-term franchise other than James Bond that has done that. So of course I put in the James Bond satire at the beginning to basically say, look, we're going to have fun with this. Yeah. So Frank was like, yeah, totally aboard. I had such creative freedom. It was ridiculous. You know, only I think twice, you know, he came in and asked me to change something. One was I'd written Jason's father in at the end of the movie. And he said, you know what, as much as I love the idea, as much as I love the scene, if we tell the audience, look, here's Jason's father, there's going to be people going, oh no, now the next one's going to be about Jason and his dad. No, you know, so he said, I just, if you don't mind, take that out. And I go, okay, I understand that. And then the other was after we screened it the first time for just, you know, a party hardy crowd that were at Paramount that were so drunk, so stoned. It was like a roller coaster ride where I couldn't hear one word of dialogue. They were just hooting and hollering to the whole thing. And at the end of it, Frank goes, I think we should do 3 more kills. I got 13 kills. I thought that would be great. That'd be cool. And we need 3 more. And I go, well, who are we going to kill? And he goes, I don't know, you'll figure it out. So I thought, all right, well, I didn't kill the caretaker because he was supposed to have the scene with Jason's father at the end. I thought, okay, so I got to set up some way to kill him. And I thought a pretty decent kill for him with the drinking and then having Jason ram the whiskey bottle into his neck. And then it's like, hey, where am I going to get 2 others? And I've never been happy with this idea that, you know, they're out at night, he's proposing to her and he witnesses the murder of the caretaker. And then they both get speared, which to me was not a very inventive kill. Yeah. But it's like, I got him his 3 kills and, you know, for whatever reason, he felt, you know, happy about that. So those are the 2 things. Everything else is mine. So I really love the fact that if you hate this, blame me. If you like it, blame me. You know, I wanted to take the, you know, the full responsibility. And because they were in a place of kind of desperation with the franchise, it's like, you know, let's just listen to the kid. You know, he may know something we don't. Yeah. And as you know, I mean, that resurrected him. And even though I never called him Zombie Jason, that's become sort of the you know, the mark there of the human Jason and then the zombie Jason. And, you know, on we go. And we'll see what the hell happens. I've written a sequel to mine finally after 32 years. And I wrote it like 3 years ago. That all takes place in the winter. But until the lawsuit is truly settled, even though Victor Miller has the rights to the name and he can remake the original, he doesn't have Jason. So Sean Cunningham and him have to decide, well, if they want to do either of these things, you know, one wants to have Jason and the title, and they're going to have to work that out financially. God knows when that'll happen. So, you know, that's kind of where the thing lays. But you know, for years, I was so badgered by, you know, you got to do another one. I go, I just don't have any good ideas. You know, I offered up, you know, Cheech and Chong meet Jason. You know, he said, no way. And I said, outside of that, you know, they wanted me to do Jason Meets Freddy back in '87, and New Line wouldn't allow Freddy. So, you know, that didn't happen until, as you know, many years later. So then, but now I felt like I came up with something that, as a fan now of the franchise, I think fans would really love. How he comes back, who he's targeting, all females, you know, and Jason, he's the only male in the thing, and the kind of claustrophobic aspect that The Thing had, particularly John Carpenter's The Thing, where you're out in this massive snowstorm and it's him, you know, and these 6 chicks, and a nun that's, you know, running this.
Freddy's
It's
brother.
it's a, you know, it's a retreat. It's a spiritual retreat. If you know Catholic, you know, that they're taking these sinners who, you know, to try to get them to, you know, kind of redeem themselves. And they got this Irish kick-ass nun who's basically the villain for the first 20 minutes of the film until, you know, Jason steps in. But, you know, I wanted to take that kind of Catholic background and spin it a bit and have these badass girls up against, you know, our boy. And I just thought it could be an, you know, interesting thing to watch, you know, play out.
I definitely like the winter vibe. Winter's an untapped horror landscape, you know what I mean? You know, like Adam Green's Frozen, which I think might be Adam Green's masterpiece. You know, that really, I mean, there's real terror in that film, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it's true. It's hard to do, though. I mean, ironically, Vincent, who did Never Hike Alone and Never Hike Alone in the Snow, he was writing his winter idea exactly the same time I was writing mine. Neither one of us were aware of it until we kind of got together one day. And no, I guess he heard when I announced I was doing, he goes, well, you know, I've got one that I'm, you know, halfway funded on. And I go, you do? So I thought, oh, fuck, you know, there goes that idea. But when I saw his, I mean, he could not shoot in like heavy snow. And that's the problem with you try to do it real. The snow's there one day and gone the next. So for me, it's like, I'm going to have to make a lot of artificial stage things and then shoot all the real snow stuff in a very condensed period of time. And of course, at night, it's going to be, you know, sub-zero temperatures to stick a crew in. So you know, you really got to be mindful that you don't give people hypothermia in the in the art of trying to make a movie. So mine becomes much more expensive to do because of that. So I can't do it as a fan film. It's just way too out of that league of what's affordable. So I have to wait out, you know, this you know, this rights thing. If hopefully it gets resolved in my lifetime. You know?
Oh yeah. It's Child's Play just had a big rights thing they went through too, which was a nightmare, you know.
Yeah,
they're so profitable. These franchises are so profitable. Especially like the Hollywood system looks at what do we have that can continuously make us money forever, and it's these things, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if they cover their nut, I mean, be honest, guys. I mean, that's exactly what, you know, Friday the 13th was for Paramount. They did not want to acknowledge they were making it. We had to hide under titles of David Bowie albums. You know, we were Aladdin Sane. We were shooting it. And, you know, they didn't talk about it until it's like as if they just picked up the film, you know, but they certainly were behind it. And that's the money they used to make their better films, you know, off of these things that they knew, you know, Cheech and Chong and all those kinds of franchise type movies, you know, and it's still the same way, you know, the Marvel and DC, all that stuff, but, you know, huge copyright stuff that's going on with those things too now. And, you know, it takes something like Scarlett, who just got pissed off about, hey, I didn't get a theater release, you know, she got, they're not saying, but the rumors are somewhere around $40 million over what she felt she deserved, you know, and that she got boned. But whose fault was it? COVID. I mean, shit.
Right. Some people, they say you can't use COVID for an excuse. Give me my money. Give me my money.
Yeah.
I want my money now.
Yeah. It's like, I want my, what's that insurance commercial with I want my money now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's my money and I need it now.
Yeah.
But I think Friday the 13th Part 6 is one of the most beloved films. It's very dark. It has the rock and roll theme, very rock and roll to it, you know, sound
Yeah.
as well as the whole vibe of it, the look of it and everything, which I'm sure was very, you know, that was supposed to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And the children aspect is something I always like bringing up, because like the fact that kids are even in it, like he never kills a kid, but when you see him close to the cabin or whatever, you get the vibe that he could kill a kid, and that does
Yeah.
create a vibe within you, which makes him even more dangerous. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know what else happened that was kind of a surprise is by having the kids in there over the years, as it obviously was released on, you know, VHS and DVDs and of course showing on TV, and, you know, a young child audience was seeing it and they were identifying with the, oh my God, that could be me in there too.
Yeah.
So it kind of pulled in a younger audience. And the same thing happened with One Dark Night. I never intended that to be a PG movie. I just wanted to have something that had a lot of gore and maggots and pus and, you know, and all this stuff. But they gave me a PG. And as a result, parents, grandparents were taking their kids to see this thing in the theaters, and it completely traumatized them. And, you know, I meet them years later and you go, you fucked me up so bad, but you know what? I'm a filmmaker now, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, you never know. You never know where your stuff's going to go and, you know, what's going to happen in the long run. It's the amazing miracle of movies.
Yeah. Influence. I mean, just like music, you know, it's created, and, you know, 100 people could listen to it and feel 100 different things, you know what I mean? Or watch it and feel 100 different things. It's art. It's like, you know, it's emotion, you know, it's just raw emotion, like bottled up, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing that all of us strive to try to do, which is create stuff that somehow has universal appeal. You know, it's like somebody in Russia understands that emotion, understands that situation the same way, you know, somebody in Massachusetts would, or somebody in South America. There's, you know, male, female things, there's mistrust things, there's life and death, there's, you know, all these things that, you know, you even without the words, you see kind of what the dynamics are, and you start to put it together and identify with it. And when that happens, you know, people tell other people, oh, you got to see this. It really, you know, really gets to you.
Yeah.
And whether it's horror or comedy or tragedy or whatever, it's still those same basic things that we want, which is emotion.
Yeah. Speaking of emotion, whenever I see Date with an Angel, I feel heavy emotion, because the girl of my dreams, Phoebe Cates, that I could never have, is in that film. So I get very emotional. Another great film. I know Alex is a gigantic fan of the film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny with you talking about the comedy aspects, because I mean, most of the stuff that I've seen of yours, of course, has always been horror related, and Date with an Angel is, of course, all, you know, romantic comedy esque, you know, a lot of physical comedy in that, and it really shows, you know, your comic style and your comic timing, which I really appreciate. I thought it was really good.
Thanks. Yeah, that's where my heart was. In fact, when I was trying to get that movie made, and nobody could believe that you could make a movie about an angel or a female fantasy figure like that, because there was no ET, you know, there was no Splash, there was no Mannequin, any of those things had not happened. So I took that thing around and around and around. But I had this vision because, again, growing up Catholic, there was always these icons of angels. And there was one in particular that was in my room of two little kids going across a broken bridge and this angel above them, sort of there to guide them. And that stuck in my head as a thing. And then a person that I knew at 28 died of a brain tumor, and he only had headaches for like, I don't know, maybe 6 months or something. That's sort of like a warning something was going on, but he just kept taking aspirin and stuff. And then when he passed on, I thought, God, you know, he was such a wonderful person. why did he get taken? And then suddenly the angel idea came into it. And it's like, what if God sent her down to take him? So it would be like at least a great way to go.
Yeah.
But she breaks her wing, and now he's taking care of her, not realizing he's nursing his angel of death, to go. So, that concept, to me, it's like, okay, this is the movie I want to be remembered by. This is the, so I was just really passionate to get it done. But, one dark night came along, obviously Friday the 13th, and then Dino De Laurentiis wanted me to do a Stephen King movie as the next thing. And I said, no, I want to do Date with an Angel, because that's who I am. That Jim character is me. Those three guys are my three friends from my teenage days. Everything, there's so much that's personal that's in that movie. And kicking and screaming, he said, all right, but you got to do Stephen the King next, which was sometimes they come back. So yeah, it meant a lot to me, but then it went through like 9 screenings with preview audiences, and Dino was freaking because all the movies in his library of stuff that he had just made, and I'm talking about William Friedkin, Bruce Beresford, Peter Bogdanovich, David Lynch with Blue Velvet, which he was at the time considered a failure to Dino. And then the only movie that he really hated and wouldn't release was the only thing that took off after he caved and dropped the company, and people picked up those movies, was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And that, again, who knew? Yeah. But Date with an Angel sort of was kind of thrown out onto screens and taken off the next week, and because he had no money for promotion or whatever, and it sort of became this forgotten little 80s romantic comedy. But as the years have worn on, there's a lot of people that have discovered it, on TV, on DVD, and I just recently did the commentary to the new version, or the version with some special features and stuff. And I found myself talking a lot about the music choices that I made for the thing, as well as obviously Phoebe was incredible to work with, as was Emmanuel Bayart, and even Michael Knight. But the most humorous thing is when I wrote this and we started casting, the first guy to come in who I really wanted, because I saw him on a TV show and I saw him, like in a low budget comedy horror thing, was Jim Carrey.
Nice.
And Jim wanted to do it in the worst way. He kept calling me, have you heard back from Dino? But, and Dino went to me, what, he's a funny kid, but he's not a good looking kid. We got to get a good looking kid, which is why I like Michael Knight. But, when I had to call and tell Jim that, he was so upset. He goes, look, Tom, I'll do anything, I'll suck his dick. I'll do anything. I said, Jim, it's not going to work. He's got a beautiful blonde, wife. He doesn't need you sucking. But yeah, I mean, what a huge mistake that was, because 2 years later, the man's making $20 million a movie.
I know.
But yeah, it's still, to me, a very special film, because there is so much personal in there, and it kind of, was one of those ones that certain people kind of either hate it because it's just like, oh my God, it's so sugary, or they love the fact that it has a lot of the Frank Capra aspects to it, that he was my mentor, and he was the one through the whole process that I would send the script to, and he would give me notes, and he gave us a quote for the movie that Dino wouldn't use because he said, who knows who Frank Capra is? I said, if I made a Western and John Ford liked it, wouldn't you put that? Nah, I wouldn't put the John Ford. No kids know John Ford. So, but that relationship with Frank was everything, and that kind of was my tribute to him and his influences.
Yeah. Music plays such an important part in your films. I recently heard an interview with Tarantino, talked about how when he goes to write a new movie, the first thing he does is he goes into a record store room in his house and he picks out the records to songs he thinks would fit. And if he can't figure out the soundtrack, he won't write the movie. Now, do you have anything that you do, is it from the get-go, or do you kind of in post-production figure out what you want to put in?
It's usually a post thing, because as time has gone on, I mean, I didn't know what the music exactly was going to be for the, the first few movies, except Date with an Angel. The composer, Randy Kerber, and I were, he was, he did all the music for my comedy group. And he recorded on synthesizer the main theme 4 years before we made the movie. So when I would be going, any place, I would be listening to that main theme. So that really was in my head through the whole process of trying to get that movie made. That was the only one. Everything else was sort of like, let's see when we put it together, what's the soul here? What's the best way to kind of, convey the scene? And Date with an Angel, all that music was not supposed to be there. That was supposed to be an orchestral score with a little bit of rock and roll here and there. But those were the days when it was like, it had to be like a music video, and wall to wall songs from the period. And it completely kind of took out of the romantic fantasy and made it more, romantic comedy aspect to it. And I don't regret, because there's so many great songs in there. And the fact that Stevie Winwood gave us, finer things for like the same amount of money that we got Angel Baby and stuff was amazing. So, and there just was just some really cool, I mean, very 80s kinds of sound music. So from that standpoint, I sort of look back and go, well, I kind of like that it has its own sort of album, to it.
Yeah. Now, well, sometimes they come back. Now, originally I heard that was supposed to be a part of Cat's Eye, the anthology film, but it was a little too long or something like that. Was that the story behind that?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the script was, handed to me, as I said, after Date as the next thing Dino wanted to do. And he wanted it to be he got money from CBS. And of course, they were doing all these Stephen King movies on ABC, and CBS wanted to have, a Stephen King movie. And then Dino wanted to have a widescreen CinemaScope Stephen King horror movie for Europe. So when I was shooting it, I had to kind of look at the monitor and frame for widescreen and also frame for television box, which is, not what I wanted to be doing, but I had to do it because it had to go for both formats. But yeah, the script with the credited writers, it didn't really work. It didn't have all the humanity and stuff. And then the writer Tim Kring, K-R-I-N-G, who I think went on to do a series for NBC, and I can't remember the name of it, but he and I got into a room and started talking about what it needed to be. And so he did a total rewrite to my, specifications and things that, he thought would be cool. And that's pretty much why I think the movie works, because it isn't just sort of the best the best moments from Stephen King's past, like the car from, Christine and Stand By Me influences. And I mean, there were so many other things that's what Stephen King said when he saw it. He said, well, some of it's the original story, but there's a lot of best of King in there. But that was the kind of stuff that the original writers who did, I think, Jewel of the Nile, had on that script. And then we ended up having so much that was so much deeper. And part of it was, I was going through the most bizarre period of my entire life in that little stretch. In the book that Joe Maudry did on me, A Strange Idea of Entertainment, there's a whole chapter just devoted to Sometimes They Come Back, because me and Nick Garris were teamed together, and we were creating 2 TV series. They Came from Outer Space and She-Wolf of London, trying to get writers and directors on, these 20 episodes each. I was, directing a Disney Showtime 5-camera comedy thing called Stephen Banks Home Entertainment, because I directed the play of Stephen King's thing. My father was dying. My daughter was about to be born. And I was trying to prep Sometimes They Come Back, that was going to shoot in Kansas. Literally, all of this stuff was happening all simultaneously. So in the middle of doing the comedy for Disney Disney Showtime, my father passed away. So on the day we were supposed to tape, I said, can we move it? Because I have to do my father's funeral and the eulogy. Disney said, nope, no, you can't do it. And of course, I was thinking, what would my dad say to me? And I thought, no, he'd say, don't do it. Take the show, do the show. I'm not going anywhere. That's for you. So I made the compromise. I said, okay, I'm not going to be there for the rehearsal. I'm going to go, let my assistant director, go through the whole rehearsal. He's got all my notes. I'm going to do the funeral, do the eulogy, be with my family, and then I'll come back and do the thing that night. And then the next day I was on a plane to Kansas. Never got a chance to mourn. My daughter was born. We brought the baby with us, there. It was, so I'm making this thing, and everything that could go wrong was going wrong on that show from day one. When it snowed, when it wasn't supposed to, we were behind a day, and it just, Brooke Adams twisted her ankle. Extras were getting hurt. The transportation department quit, left all the equipment at the other last location. We went from a 28-day shoot to a 36-day shoot on a small little basic, low budget horror movie / TV movie. Yeah. But thank God, every time the producer would hand me the phone and said, Dino wants to talk to you. I said, Dino, I'm doing everything I can. You making me a goddamn good picture? Yes, sir. All right. Give me back the mic. Here. That was it. You let me do it. But somehow all these elements somehow got into the movie. And even though we had all these problems and stuff, and it all came together, and Terry Paneri's score just was so heartfelt that, the movie has become a real favorite to a lot of people that, are just now kind of catching up with it. There was a really interesting article just came out, I think, a few days ago on it. Calling it sort of the last Stephen King movie on TV from that era and stuff. And yeah, it's certainly not perfect. It certainly doesn't deliver a lot of stuff that people would expect, but for a TV movie budget and low budget little horror movie, it was more character driven than it was effects or, any of that. But, I look at it as one of those things where, God, I don't know how we got through it and how we did it, but it's sort of like the ugly stepchild. You end up loving because of all the faults, and it worked for people.
It's funny, people do give like those Stephen King movies that were made for TV hard times, you know what I mean? I hate it, but yeah. We got Mick Garris, Craig R. Baxley, I believe. He's done some really cool made for TV Stephen King's movies as well. It's a weird vibe. Now, Mick, I know you're close friends with Mick, right? You guys met back in the day when you were trying to find directors for those shows, you said?
Yeah, well, we actually met. There was a screening of my film One Dark Night at USC for the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror fans, of which Mick was in the audience. And, he had not directed yet, and he came up, to me afterwards. And we were like brothers, like instantly, same likes, same passions about stuff, and became, friends. And then Mick has been really instrumental in my career, getting me directing job on The Others, the TV Spielberg series he was a part of. We wrote an amazing stories that Robert Zemeckis, directed, years ago. We've just, ended up collaborating a number of times. And of course, he's like, the go-to Stephen King guy. And I turned down the stand because I just didn't see how they were going to make it with the allotted days. And I had just done this mini series called In a Child's Name, and that was hard enough. And this just seemed like, as much as I thought this would be incredible, I just went through such an ordeal. I thought, I don't want to fail on a Stephen King movie. Yeah. But, Mick jumped in there and did a great job. And it's, obviously it's become one of the, the legendary of the movies, for the Stephen King miniseries. I felt for him doing The Shining, though. I thought, boy, that no matter what Stephen King feels about it, the rest of us love that movie. So that to me was a hard thing to jump in. But ironically, this Tuesday, Mick just, texted me yesterday and said, they invited me to one of the awards for the Academy of Science Fiction and Fantasy. You want to go? And I went, yeah. We haven't hung out for a while, so I'm actually going to see him on Tuesday. But yeah, he's great guy, and yeah, we've been close awful lot of years now.
I always joke that we're taking the Mick approach now, because Mick got his start as like a fan who interviewed horror filmmakers and stuff like that, and then he kind of got his foot in the door and was able to write, and then I think was able to then start directing them. So like,
yeah,
I joked that our podcasting will be our Mick Garris route into the business.
yeah. Mick was a publicist. I mean, that was the job he got, because he's got a very outgoing personality, and he luckily he was there at Universal when The Thing was being done, and Poltergeist, all those incredible 80s movies. Yeah. So he got to meet all these people, and since he's likable, when he came to them later for stuff, Mick, sure, I'll help. And one thing led to another. John Landis produced his first like TV thing for Disney, I guess it was Disney Channel. Yeah. And then of course once Spielberg took him under his wing, then it was great. But the biggest thing he's done was create that for us business, Masters of Horror thing. Yeah. Because I got to tell you, boys, to go into and sit at a table and there's John Carpenter, there's Rob Zombie, there's Quentin Tarantino, there's all these filmmakers, and Wes Craven and Tobe Hooper, and you find out, no bullshit, these guys, these legendary guys, are no different than the three of us. We're all lovers of this genre. We're all geeks at heart. We're all, and we all admire each other's work. And it's like, you should have done that thing. In fact, there's a script that I just got that I kept thinking, you would be the perfect, and to have someone like Wes Craven turn to you and say, I wish I had your career. I went, what? He goes, you got to do all these different genres. As soon as I try to do a different genre, it fails, and I'm right back into doing horror again. I go, but you're fucking Wes Craven, name above the title. He goes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you want to do other things and they won't let you, because you've got to hit a particular success level, which means financial. He says it's been a very frustrating career for me. So I like bird watching. I like things. That's kind of more where my head's at now. But, and I never would have ever thought that. But yeah, when I got into television, my rule was, if I just did a thriller, next one's a romantic movie. If I just did a romantic movie, next one's going to be a Christmas movie. Next one's going to be, some sort of, alcoholism, mental illness, AIDS, issues, whatever. Yeah. So I just kept jumping genres because I wanted the chance to try all these different things. And then I ended up at fucking Lifetime, doing television for women, going, what the fuck am I doing here? I'm a guy made a Friday the 13th. What the hell? But it was an opportunity to kind of do teenage material and female material, and there were no other female directors. Yeah. So and I could bring them in 17, 18 days. So they go, you're our guy. But at a certain point, I just burnt out. I was like, I just can't do this anymore. I got to cool it, and get back to the sources of life and study and stuff. And then ironically, the rock and roll thing kicked in, and it was like, holy shit, now I can go and do something I wanted to do 40 years ago, that off I went. So now I'm trying to, get back to what I used to do. And, like anything else, I'm now part of the, back of the bus team, you had your shot, back of the bus, brother. We got these young guys, it's time for their shot. And I understand that, and I embrace it. And at the same time, it's like, you're going to have to put me in that grave before I'm going to stop, because, if you love what you do, you got to keep doing it,
Yeah. Those TV movies, they're like real life horror. You know what I mean? Because I do notice that it's like there's a high level of drama, horrific drama, psychological, to all of them, all across the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As an actor, Alex, you would probably know. To go in there and play somebody who, is either a serial killer or just murdered his wife and covered it up, a true story. These people don't go to bed like oh shit, I did something bad, they sleep fine. I mean, that sociopath mentality. I talked to a number of these people on death row that did some really horrendous things. And they're like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I mean, it's like, no. So, as a director, working with actors to get them into that, that thing where they're not indicating anything that's evil or whatever, this person just needed to go. They were just not good for the planet. They weren't good for me. They're not good for me. And they rationalize this shit in a way that you go, holy shit. Or they pass lie detector tests. Did you do this? Nope. And the needle just stays there. And you go, holy shit. So a lot of that stuff too was my fascination with real monsters. I did Stephen King, I did Freddy, I did Jason, I almost did Bride of Chucky. I turned it down, another mistake. But, when I got into TV, it was global warming and AIDS and mental illness and alcoholism and prejudices and, all these real monsters that I thought, if I could shine any light on that, would be really, interesting. Or the DC Sniper, doing that movie was like, shit, they just caught these guys 6 months ago. We hadn't even tried them. And I'm out there saying, yep, these are the guys that and here's how they did it. And it was true, but we took a lot of flack for that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I mean, when you do like films like Nightmare, Halloween, and Friday the 13th, and you got these iconic horror characters that are created. I think it's funny that no matter how horrendous and all that, they kind of give you a little sense of actually relaxation, in the sense that that deep down, even in the moment you might believe it, deep down that there's not a Freddy, there's not a Jason, there's not a Michael. But when you start delving into the psychosis of real people, real monsters, and the fact that, like you said, that
for real,
that your neighbor next door that you might have lunch with, that seems normal, could also it's like, I just didn't like her, and so I just killed her, and then I went to sleep and had a good nap. Because I've played different characters, and I played some darker characters that have questionable motives and questionable ways of looking at the world. And the thing is that as an actor, you always have to find something. We actually interviewed Happy Anderson near the beginning of the year. He played Jerry Brudos in the Mindhunter TV series on Netflix. And we were talking, and he made a comment that, when you're playing these real life, killers and all that, you have to, find something about them. He says, of course, with him, it was like, the abuse that he suffered. He says what Brutus ended up doing was horrific, and he was a horrific person. But when you're playing that person, you can't look at that person as horrific or as a monster, because they don't see themselves in that way. So he said that I mean, that's how he was able to get into that character. And I totally agree with him that, I mean, no matter what character you're playing, whether it's a serial killer or a make-believe monster like Jason, that you have to find something in that character that you can relate to, so you can play that character realistically. Because like you said, I mean, when you're dealing with these real life killers, a lot of times they don't see what they did as wrong. They saw what they did as either necessity or just something I just did, and I'm sad I'm caught, but that's about it.
It's like seeing a spider and it's like, oh shit, that spider could bite somebody, I'm gonna kill it. you know, and that the way they look at another person, it's like, you know what, they're not a good person. And, you know, they hurt me and they're probably going to hurt other people. Let's just get rid of them. And why did you do it? Because they weren't worth living. I don't know. And then other times it is those passion kills that, you know, you come to learn that somebody's been planning this for a while because this person just, you know, hurt them so badly. That I just read something yesterday in England that some guy who was like a nurse somewhere, and this other woman that I guess he loved and didn't love him or something, he went out and created a fat suit and made himself look black and a female. And, you know, he went, you know, like over to her house and threw acid in her face, completely disfiguring her. And by dressing up, she opened the door and did not expect that. And, you know, they had pictures like from, I guess, wherever this happened, that they had the surveillance cameras, and you see this guy and it's not even a good fat suit, you know. And I thought, God, you know, how far certain people will go to plan out something like that. And this woman's going to spend the rest of her life, you know, disfigured over this. But obviously he thought about it long enough that this was the right thing to do for what she did to him. And those people are the ones that really scare me. And when I had children, then it became like, God, I don't want somebody else's fucked up child, you know, to hurt my child, you know, just because they, you know, were not raised correctly. And, you know, there's so many times that kind of thing, you know, happens.
It's tragic. It's a gamble, such a gamble. Well, Tommy, we've had you on here for a good chunk of time. We usually wrap up with one question.
Sure.
That question is, we have a lot of artists, filmmakers, musicians, comedians, everything across the board that listen and watch the show. We always like to ask people, you know, when times get tough and you find yourself in a lull of work, is there anything you find yourself doing or thinking that helps you kind of get through maybe a tough time in the art forms?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I kind of always come back to this one word that I literally always share with the students that I work with. And I said, you know, like, I can't teach you anything. You're going to learn by going out there and doing it. You can read all the books on filmmaking. I can tell you everything I know. You know, I could show you movies. I could show you clips on YouTube of all the best shots, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about, did I inspire you? When you get inspired to do anything, I mean, that's the hit. You know, when I was did visual comedy and stuff as an act, you know, I'd go into Home Depot or someplace and walk around. And if I saw something that inspired me with an idea, oh, I know what I could do with that broom as a comic bit or whatever. And it's the same thing now, going to movies and watching things that inspire me and make me go, I've got to keep going. I got to do one of those kinds of things. You know, that's kind of, you know, what at least gets the juices going. Then I got to get down in front of the typewriter and, you know, the computer and start writing something. And hopefully if inspiration clicks, then it's like, you know, it's like you're getting somebody talking to you and you're just, you know, taking the dictation up. It's amazing when those kinds of things occur. So for me, what I always tell people is keep looking for places, people, you know, other movies, something that makes you go, yeah, I want to do that. And I'll go through all this shit in my life that's going on. But, you know, I got to get to there, you know, and it's sort of, that's the brass ring, you know, that's the element of hope. You know, without hope, it's like, I can do it. I'm just going to get rejected. You know, I'm too old for this now, or I don't have enough breaks. Nobody's going to give me a break yet, or whatever. All of that stuff is going to keep playing on you. It's just, we're human, you know, and we're going to keep finding the insecurity buttons. But it's not having like a false ego. It's more like, let me find something that somebody else has done or did, you know, at some point, and go, I want to do that too, you know. And I love when directors like Scorsese and stuff says, yeah, I stole that from Howard Hawks and I stole that from Kubrick, and it, you know, and the same thing I tell students. If somebody says, oh, that's a Kubrick shot, you go, yeah, Yes, it is. It sure. I love that. Didn't you love that Shining? Yeah, yeah, that's it. Just didn't, that kind of inspired me. And I thought, by putting in that move in this kind of thing, it would make it work. Oh, okay. Stop saying, no, no, I wouldn't steal. I wouldn't. No, artists steal and artists need inspiration. And all the greats, you can look at their work and you can see who their masters were, who were the people that inspired them. And the good ones, definitely share that with you, especially if you want to be inspired. You go say, oh, what got you going, and that's what you look for. So that to me is the bottom line, finding things, people, stuff, something you read, something you watch that inspire you. Just keep looking for inspiration.
That's great advice. Where can people hear some of your music?
Well, the Sloths are on the Sloths, thesloths.org. The sloths, like the little furry animals with the 3 big claws. So there's stuff there. It's also pretty much on all the other stuff. I think we have a Sloths Pandora station that has our music and other garage music from that 60s period. And a lot of stuff on YouTube, either put, Tom McLoughlin or Tommy McLoughlin. And if you want to see my plans for the afterlife, there's one called Legends Never Die, Hollywood Forever. And it was something that was made for one of the supplemental things in the Friday the 13th. I can't remember which one. I think it was the Camp Crystal Lake one, but now it's on the Scream Factory big box on there. But if you just, if you can't afford the big box, but you should, if you're a fan, go on YouTube. And I talk about how I wrote Friday the 13th there at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And then how I discovered that this is not my third act. I'm still in the second act. Once I die and go into that crypt, that becomes my third act. And I have plans that I've been setting in motion, as I said at the beginning of our conversation about the paranormal, things that I've been doing on a regular basis to set the stage for what I'm hoping will be a real breakthrough in paranormal experiments. And I won't be here to say if it worked. So all I can do is be inspired by the idea of it and hope that other people, pick up on it. And I've had a lot of people contact me and said, yeah, I went by your crypt today and I saw the instructions on there and stuff. That's so cool. And every year on my birthday, I gather a group of people and we just hang out there and we talk about what we're doing and what we want to do. Nothing about death, nothing negative, just life. And that's part of, to me, the big overall scheme of things, which is, trying to just make things positive, about things that are scary. And nothing's more scary to people than death. I'm embracing it as it says on the crypt, to die will be an awfully big adventure, Peter Pan. So it's that kind of a way I'm approaching it. And I hope it works. I hope somebody hears something, feels something, smells something, whatever. But as I said, I won't be around. I'll gone someplace, but the residual energy, the bio energy that we all have in us and every living thing has it, to me, that's the experiment. Can I have that retain itself there? So that, like visiting your grandmother's house, you go, God, I can still feel her here, or murder sites. It's like something bad happened here. And certain people pick it up. Certain people are very sensitive. Other people are like, I feel nothing, man. What the fuck are you talking about? You have to have those two things, positive and negative energy that have to come together and then something can manifest. But as I said, I'm still looking for that formula.
We all are. Hell yeah. Date with an Angel getting a new release, a new upgraded release.
Yeah. That it. When did it come out? I think like 2 months ago. I think it was like 2 months ago that they just released. They just did another One Dark Night one too, that they made it look like a VHS box.
I love that. Yeah.
On the Blu-ray, which was kind of cool. But yeah, they keep because I certainly don't get any money on any of these things. They just
unfortunately,
I still haven't got paid as a director on Friday the 13th because there's no profit on that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, it's like, if you're doing it for the money, there are much better ways to make money in this world. But if you do it for the love of what you love to do, then, it's okay.
And you're teaching as well. So if anybody's in the California area, where could they pop in to get some classes?
Well, yeah, it's a university. So it's Chapman University, Dodge College. So there's a, pretty expensive, ticket to get in
won't
there.
be popping in. There'll be no popping in. Yeah.
No, it's not a pop. I mean, if you get a hold of me and if I can slide you in some way so you can at least, see a class or something. But yeah, that's, and I always wonder how people, can afford that. But, hey, I put away money my whole career so that both my kids could go to college because I couldn't. I just audited classes, at USC and UCLA, stuck in the back and learned what I could. And if you want to do it, you find ways of doing it. And there's so much stuff on the internet now that you can learn, but nothing's better than actually doing it, teaming up with your buds and just, let's just make one of these for fun this weekend, and you learn stuff and you have fun and, who knows what could happen with it.
Exactly. Well, Tommy, this has been fantastic, man. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Sure.
Would love to have you back on. You ever want to come back on again to promote anything, or we'll be promoting from afar, the whole nine. We love you here. You know what I mean?
You. All right. And if anybody's in the East, I'll be at Chiller in New Jersey on the 29th, 30th, and 31st.
31st, yeah.
Which is probably the closest. The other one's, England, and others Germany. I thought I had one other one someplace, but I'm blanking now where it is. But ask at your local conventions, because I love to meet you guys. I love going out and hearing, how you first saw one of the movies or what it did for you, as a filmmaker or even just as a fan. So, if you can make it out to any of those conventions, I love meeting people.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, if you ever end up coming up to like Salem, Mass again, or anything up in this way, just hit us up. We'll meet up anywhere that you're going to be, and maybe we can do a ghost walk together or something.
Yeah, there you go. That would be fun.
Walk with the ghost.
Well, thank you guys so much. It's really been a pleasure talking with you, and best of luck with everything. Hang in there. Don't give up. Don't give up those dreams, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You have a good Halloween over there and a great remainder of the weekend.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.